know. I just about managed to get here because I'm not good at finding my way around places. I failed geography. I can see the teacher saying, calling me and said, if I was here, I said, yes, miss. And she said, you failed, you come to the bottom. And I said, thank you, miss. I've never made any attempt at all to learn geography, because I'm good at other things. I don't waste my time worrying about what I can't do. I have 3 children, and a bad day it feels like 6. They're lovely. They're lovely children. My eldest daughter, she's a social worker. With 2 children, our grandchildren, and a son-in-law who's a lecturer. And my second child, he works for the NHS and is very gentle person. And my youngest baby, who thinks he's the eldest, is a personality sort of disorder somewhere. He thinks he's the eldest, really. He's very much like me, so he attempts to speak on everybody's behalf. He's about to do his PhD. So, and a good husband who ought to be given a medal, really, after being married to me. So yes, so that's how. And a very significant moment in my life, having been the first black woman, African Caribbean, born in the Caribbean. I grew up in England, which is a really interesting experience because I don't know Caribbean well enough to make any informed decisions about it because I was a child when I came here, and settled in Nottingham. I'm an only child, and like being an only child because I like my own company. Yeah. So yeah, and I have a good husband. He's a Yorkshire man who I've been married for more years than he cares to remember. So that's about 45 years. We were youngsters when we got married, and nobody gave us a chance. White guy and a Yorkshire man and a determined Caribbean British. And we have, this is our final church. I've been the priest of, I was a curate, which in Anglican speak, it's newly ordained deacon, and you spend 3 years as a curate, and I spent it in a very racist, lovely, beautiful parish called St. Michael's, full of NF on every door, and my priest said to me, whatever you do, do not go where it says NF. And you don't tell Eve that she can't do something, okay? Because she's going to do it. And I did, and I walked into the bar and I said, hello everybody, and they ate out of my hands for 4 years. And they still keep in touch, one or two of them keep in touch with me. So that's my first parish, very racist. And then my second parish was a middle class parish, St. Nicholas, Kings Norton, which suited me because I come from a middle class background in the Caribbean, privately educated, okay? So I suited my personality, St. Nicholas, Kings Norton. And then I was sent to Emmanuel, Heights Heath, and I spent 11 years there. I know I don't look old enough and all of that. So I spent 11 years at Emmanuel, rebuilt the church because it was a poor church, poor congregation, unlike St. Nicholas. It was a poor congregation, only one black person in that church. Up until then, they were all totally white congregations. And then Emmanuel rebuilt the church, long story short. We rebuilt it, new roof, new ceiling, new floor, you name it. Did all kinds of wonderful things. And so I spent 11 years there. And then one morning I got up and I said, I like a challenge, God. When God finds me a job, challenge, okay. God sees me coming and thinks, oh no. I wonder what she wants now. Kind of battle and that, because I fight with God all the time. Abraham seems so obedient, Okay, God, I will go and I'll take Sarah with me, and Lot will meet me there, and all of that. In ancient Africa where Abraham was, and that is part of history I'm really looking at, because I don't claim to be an intellectual. I know my history. I'm not an academic, and I don't want to be an academic. I could be, but I don't want that. I'm a people person. I love people, human beings. I'm not saying the two can't go together. They can't go together, but for me, I'm speaking personally. So I'm not here to tell you about the ins and outs of the Windrush legalities of reclaiming all kinds of stuff. I'm here to tell you about having been brought up by the Windrush generation. And then when I left Emmanuel, I said to the bishop, I want to go to a nice quiet church where I don't have to rebuild it, okay? I want to go somewhere where I can just have a wonderful ministry and just have lots of parties and dance parties, and that suits me, okay? Well, the bishop didn't listen. And I ended up at Holy Trinity in Birchfield. You've asked me where is that? Where is Birchfield? It's north of Birmingham. Having failed geography, it's, yeah, I got lost when I came here the first few weeks. So I got lost almost this morning, so tells you something about my geography. But it's about a 10-minute bus ride from town. I love it there because nobody wants to go to Harrodsworth. I still see people pass on buses looking, oh, I'm just glad I don't live there. That's pitiful, you know. All those people, oh, the terrible, terrible time they must have because, well, it's an inner city place, isn't it? And God surely can't be there because we've got him wrapped up in some nice furry place somewhere where he's not troubled by our reality. Mm. Well, I've worked in many middle-class parishes, and I'm not fooled by the nice curtains, okay? I'm not fooled by it because human beings are too complex for them. So having been shaped by, my mother died 12 years ago, I'm an only child, and my mother always looked at me as if to say, I'm just so glad she's the only one, Lord. Our mom used to sit on the stairs and say, because my father died young, he was only 33 and left mom with just me. And she'd say, I don't know where in that wonderful quintessential Jamaican accent, which I love. My children tell me I speak with an English accent, but that's surprising. I went to finish my schooling here. So she said, I don't know what they're going to do with her, Lord. And her father is there. I'm on my own with her, and she won't do what she's told. She keeps fighting about church and God. And I've never apologized to her for that because that was where I was. Because I wanted to understand why Mother and her generation came and was so unhappy. Hard-working, just lovely human beings that they were, and yet life was so hard. I wanted to understand why Mother went to church on a Sunday and yet was clearly so unhappy in a society which invited them to come. And her death sort of enabled me to begin to ask the question out loud. Now, please do not get away with the idea and go away with the idea that the only thing I'm interested in as a parish priest is racism. I'm a good parish priest. I really am. I say so myself. If my leaving service last month was anything to go by, if it's measuring wrong, I have 1,500 people to say farewell to me, and 800 online. And it was all over the television, they were there all day. I would like to think it's because I showed them something, all my parishes, something of God's love, even when it's hard to believe in it. I've never found faith easy. I envy people who just believe in God, no questions asked. I will not pretend that I haven't come close to being an atheist. How do you believe in God when as a child I experienced, like my generation did, the barbarity of racism, and all its ugliness, and all its middle-class beauty. I'm not here, I don't make people feel comfortable, because if we're going to talk about justice and peace, then there's nothing comfortable about it if you've experienced injustice and lack of peace. because there's no war and guns doesn't mean there is peace. So when Mom died, I agree that this will be my starting point this morning. When Mom died, every Caribbean of a certain generation, this is a sort of beautiful, quintessential Jamaican photograph. The particular kind of cameras that makes all Caribbean photographs look the same. Every Jamaican home and Caribbean, just not Jamaican, not just Jamaica, have a photo like this. So you could just go to a home next door or next country and you will see these photographs. All of them have this same look. The Empire Windrush, but these are, and then we have in our house, in every Caribbean house, Jesus is the head of this house. And it may be a house of war, but there's a picture. Jesus is the head of the house. Or the silent listener to the conversation. That's the one I really hated, because I like conversation. And I don't like people listening if I didn't invite them. Okay. So when Mom died, I thought there were two things I had to get rid of. There were three things I had to get rid of. 2 crosses, and you'll hear a lot more about that because it threatened me as a child. But the trunk. So every Caribbean had a trunk. You know what a trunk is? It's a huge, ugly, beastly looking thing. And why did they have that? Because all the people from the Caribbean who came on plane, boats, Windrush, an old ship, basically an old ship, really. Maybe that shows the indignities with which my ancestors, my mother's recent ancestors, were treated. There was nothing fabulous about the ship. It was, yes, it carried that great generation, and I call them a great generation for good reason, which I'll go into in a moment, but it was an old ship. And they came with their suitcases full of dreams. They didn't come because they were poor, all of them, because my family wasn't poor. But my family were all trained nurses from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, and in my case, from Jamaica. So coming wasn't, one of my mother's lament, and I recall that as I sat on the trunk, because it's one of the few pieces of furniture I've kept. And my children, my son said to me yesterday, so does that mean you'll never get rid of the trunk, Mom? Yeah, absolutely. Well, have you got plans for the trunk? Oh, I just thought, because I'm moving house, because I'm going to retire. I'm not retired. I retired a month ago, and I've done 6 funerals since then, some retirement, 6 funerals, 2 baptisms, and 2 weddings. So I'm a retired priest, and so glad that I'm not going to be thrown in a scrap heap somewhere. But the trunk, this trunk tells the story of the Windrush generation. And I would imagine, I get really cross with young people who are just so full of their youngness and youthfulness that they think they can get rid of pieces of furniture because it's just a piece of furniture. So when I take funerals and I say to young people, you hear I take a lot of funerals, and they say, oh, well, we just entered the house, Mrs. Reverend Eve, and we got rid of all of Mom's stuff. And I said, well, who told you to? Who gave you permission to get rid of her story? Or Dad's story, but it was always Mom who bought this cheap-looking, in some cases, but significant piece of furniture. So this is important to remember, despite its oldness, but the piece of furniture which carried a story. So let's just go back a bit. The Second World War, First World War, Caribbeans, Indians, and Africans helped to win the war of this land. So that's really important for us to understand the journey of my recent ancestors, my mother and her contemporaries. And so they came, They were invited. Post-war, after the war, First War, England sent all the Caribbeans back who helped in the First World War. They were treated shabbily. And the history of the migration of our people, our ancestors, is one of being degraded, being treated less than. I told you this was not going to be a comfortable ride. If we're really serious about justice and peace, then we have to be made uncomfortable and decide what we do with information. Bless you. Bless you. She got cold.
Good morning. Hello. Thank you so much.
They came, the Inner Power, hands of those who've heard of Inner Power. Inner Power went to Jamaica, Caribbean. For you're invited to the motherland, fatherland, come and build up the motherland. And that happened throughout the Caribbean. I don't know about Africa. I know it happened throughout the entire Caribbean. And contrary to popular view that all the Caribbeans who came on the Windrush were all poverty-stricken and looking for something to eat. I mean, if you know history well enough, and I'm not pretending to be a historian, but I know a little, and I know enough, but I read good sources of history, where Africa, where England was once an economic migrant. That's why England went all over the place. I want to stop pretending that England has always had it good, and somehow other people just have it so bad. This is always my problem with God. How can one have so much and others have so little? Is it God? It's God, God who just dishes out people whom He loves. Even after Abraham, enough to send him on a treacherous journey, and so Inner Power comes. Others came and sent to these post-slavery. Caribbean had the Arawak Indians, of course, and I need to read a bit more about them. But the Caribbeans didn't end up there because one day they got, come on, and said, we're going to go to the Caribbean. There's lots of sun just like Africa, so we'll go there. They were enslaved. They came, they weren't slaves in Africa. Africa was well-developed, culturally well-developed. No, Tarzan was so wrong. Tarzan was so wrong. It's a lie. Okay, and we have to come to grips with that if we're going to understand this. Are you with me? I mean, if you want to go home and get a bag of it, right? No, I can't cope with this. It can't be easy. We can't talk about justice and peace without holding on to the nitty-gritty and the painful bits. That's what faith is about. About hanging on to faith even when Abraham must have had bad days. Sarah, I don't know why we're doing this. Really? Whose idea was this? Going older. Now, we don't even know the people where we go. We don't know their language. How can God do this? I thought I was faithful to God. So, anyway, Inner Power comes. There was this, once again, England needed former slaves, enslaved, born slaves. Let's get that right. God didn't create black people as slaves, or else I wouldn't be the priest, because I refuse to worship any God which means me. So these former slaves were in the war. One of the great things that I've done at Holy Trinity was I was the first church in Birmingham to invite all the old soldiers to come and share their story with us, to say what it was like. And many thanked the British Army for their opportunities to go into the army. But they also tell you horror stories that we can't escape the past, no more than you can. And so they came, and they came in their droves, and they came hoping. I mean, one of the things I get really cross with the Windrush generation, my mother's generation. My mom came in 55. I was a little girl, but 55. And many of them came in 55 in the early 60s and all that. I get really cross with them because I keep thinking, if you have been treated so abominably and dehumanized, why would you trust anyone who's done that? Why would you trust any people who've done that to you? So I'm a child of the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. My parents came. My mom tells me stories about, and they tell all of us stories about sleeping in phone boxes. I write poetry, so I write brutal poems. They slept in bunkers, beds with other people. No matter how poor Caribbeans are, they are immaculate, very clean, and they have to sleep with strangers. And they had to sleep in dirty places, no Irish. Are they Irish here? Yeah. No blacks and no dogs. Common sight. They knocked off. Have you got in your room? And they slammed the door in their faces. You didn't see the signs. No Irish and no dogs and no blacks. So when they came, that terrible experience of the slave trade and losing their identity, I'm covering a lot of history here, losing all of that. You can't understand the Windrush unless you're prepared to hear that background. And so they came, and my mother said, and her generation will tell us freely, and there's a lot written now about sleeping on floors and sharing bed with others, which is terrible for Caribbeans. And I'm not saying we have a monopoly of cleanliness, and we make those remarks because they can be very painful to others who don't fall into that category. But they are particular, very particular, and they were having to sleep with strangers and just felt less than. They were made to feel once again less than. And yet there was a tremendous sense of faith as they came, and optimism. You couldn't hand it to that generation. That they hoped against the reality. You know, they've been so damaged and wounded and yet they still believed that England would be home for them. And when they came and they saw how bad it was and how hurt they were, they came for 5 years. So you ask any Caribbean and they'll say, oh, I only came for 5 years. And I'm sure they had a conference. I'm sure all the Caribbean people came together and said, how long shall we stay? They said, yeah, but since it's so bad, we'll just stay for 5 years, shall we? Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. Let's go home now. Okay, 5 years. You got 5 years to work, make some money, and go back. Sounds good. So they bought a trunk. There it is in our mom's room. It's not your room anymore, it's mine now, okay? Just get where I'm at. So, one was a trunk. Trunk, every time they have a bit of spare money, they buy some curtains. They bought some of the thickest blankets I know. They're going back to Caribbean, a hot climate. Why are you buying blankets? And they loved nice underwear. So when my mom died, oh gosh, I've never seen so many knickers in one place. I said, okay, why did you want to buy so many knickers? Because I don't know if you all have your generation to go out and say, be careful when you go out, make sure your knickers is clean. Okay, Mom, I'm 25, Mom. Yeah. And so that's true. You ask any Caribbean of my generation, my problem with the present generation, they've lost their sense of self. We don't really want to know about that. Not all of them. And I want to catch them and just shake them and say, you know what Marcus Garvey says? People without knowledge of their past is like a tree without roots. Wake up! Oh, okay. Yes. The trunk was there to remind them that there's another journey to be made because it ain't as good as they thought it would be, and they're going to have to go back to wherever they came from. So the trunk is a testimony to a journey of pain. And so we have this love-hate relationship with what we sort of widely and strangely call the Windrush generation. I had an award, one of my many awards, I have to tell you, but the award that I found most difficult to accept at the 75th celebration was I was supported as a child of the Windrush generation, where our mothers and our fathers would say, well, my mother would stand and she'd say, oh God, she says, oh, look what I've come to. In Jamaica, I had servants. She did. And I come here, they call me nigger and walk and spit at me. And Stanley is dead and I'm on my own. That was a common prayer of lament. The lament of maybe Sarah, who knows, Abraham. The lament of leaving the familiar. And so they came. And it was tough. And all of us heard our parents cry. And most of us, in fact, all of us would have been called, there's a talk. Every child. You know, you call your child and give him sex education. Oh, no. Our parents called us and give us race education. Talk to you, okay? Okay, what about now? When you're 13, you know, what is it you want, Mom? Okay. Yeah, they're gonna call me nigger, I know. Shut up. Did you hear that? And you might not get a job because even if you qualify, you won't get a job because you're a nigger. Okay, now can I go to play? No, you can't, you know, so it's called the talk. There's a very good play on about this, you know, the talk. So the generation of these men and women who came and worked 75 years. And I thought I would have been delighted to celebrate the 75 years. I thought they need an award. Never mind about me getting an award. I got the ease of it because my generation were fiercely against racism and fought tooth and nail. You know, my mother used to say, where are you going now? I'm going down the road, there's a meeting down there. There's a meeting. And my generation would go and talk about politics. And my mom would say, where did you say you're going? I'm not going, I'm going to the library. Okay then. 7 o'clock at night, what am I going to go to the library? But many of my generation had to go and find out why our parents were hurting and that we didn't know how to help them and we didn't know what to say to them because there were dedicated Christians. 99.9% of Caribbeans were Christians. And hence my antagonism towards some form of Christianity. The one that doesn't ask questions. The one who thinks that God is just so wonderful. Why would anybody want to question God? I'm an example of being chucked out of church at the age of 30. When my mom says, are you going to church this morning? One thing I did love Mom for, very political woman, she kept it very much to herself. But she'd say to me, she never forced me to go to church, even though all Caribbean generally Christian. That you're not going to go to church this morning. And then I came home one day and she said, did you have a good time at church? Because she went to a different church. Now, I was told not to come back. My mother said, what do you mean you was told? I said, the minister said I shouldn't come back because I keep asking too many questions. and the minister says, like if I come back, I have to promise not to ask any questions. I'm not going to promise that, Mum, so I shan't go back to church. And she said, oh Lord Jesus, our father is dead, and I'm on my own. So I went to my bed and I thought, oh, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be okay. Because I could see that they were overwhelmed often with work and the distress, and then Margaret Thatcher, I'm cutting a long story short, Margaret Thatcher dared to ask the Windrush generation to pay for citizenship. £75. I won't tell you what I thought of Margaret Thatcher. But when I was in my bedroom as a grown woman, and my aunt had this huge picture of Margaret Thatcher on the bed and the wall, and I said, Aunt, I can't sleep. She's a Windrush generation, definitely. I said, I can't sleep, Aunt. Why not? There's a picture of Margaret Thatcher over the bed and I can't sleep. And she said, Margaret Thatcher made me a rich woman. Because my aunt, and it's typical of many Caribbeans, had a good head for business. Very wealthy woman, 7 houses, came to England in the 50s, didn't have very much money, but a good education from the Caribbean, and a lot of money. When she died 10 years ago, she left 7 houses. And a good business, clever woman. And they're typical of many Jamaicans and Caribbean. They save money, so my mother would say, Mommy, you sure you're not going back to church on Sunday? Yes, Mom. But what about the Baptist church down the road? Don't like them. What about the Pentecostal church? No, don't like them, they're too noisy. Does that mean you're not going back to church? Yes, Mom, because I locked myself in the bedroom. So growing up with that generation, but okay, go and take the partner money down to Mrs. Good. Okay, Mom. Now, every Caribbean throw money together. That's how, because they couldn't get even a loan, a mortgage. The bank wouldn't lend back people money in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So they had to find another way. So they have what we call partner, where everybody come together, and if it's £20 a person, and if she can't afford 20, then she'd share with another person, it's £10 each. And the partner is fundamental to wealth building of this community, this generation. Because coming off a ship with just a suitcase full of dreams, I wrote a poem about that not long ago. Suitcase full of dreams and hopes for the future. And so I said, okay, Mom, tomorrow morning I'll take the money. Took the money, went to the park and played and lost it. And I was in Nottingham a month ago to my home, same home that my mother bought because she wanted to buy a house. She said, I didn't live in a rented house in Jamaica, and I don't see why I should come here and live in a rented house where you're treated like dogs. So the partner was important, and that was common right across the Caribbean. Partner money, because if it's your turn to get it, it could be £500. And £500 in the 60s, are you with me? I haven't lost you ever. £500 in the 60s and 70s was a lot of money. So they would, so I went and played on the park and the Arboretum and lost it. Mom, I've lost the money. No, Jesus, she says, where's my husband? I'm on my own. I've lost the money. You know, I still go to the park to look for the money. I was in the park last week because I can't remember the type of an handkerchief. The handkerchief, the Caribbean, the Windrush generation, the handkerchief and the trunk, the handkerchief with the money, they put it in their bosom. I tried doing it at that age, it didn't work. But you know, I lost it, and my mom thought that stayed with me because the partner money was an escape from the gaze of the man at the building society or the bank who tells you that you're a black person, you can't get it, and he got away with it. He could tell you that because there were no rules to stop him. You're not supposed to feel guilt this morning. We need to question a world in which we purport to believe in a God of justice and a God of peace. Yet, My generation, we're like little girls running up Mansfield Road and the Mansfield roads of England. As I, as a child, refused to go to church, to a church that seemed unwilling to question God. I was brought up to be terrified of God. My generation were, my mother's generation were, a God who was fierce and white. Come on. So, this thing in the house, Christ is a silent listener to every conversation. Really? So does that mean I can't, that's why I was shut out of church, because I can't question this God who can't even allow me to speak without listening in. So when Mom died, I had to put her in a home for about 6 weeks. That hurt me, that pained me, because I am a child of the Windrush, where you are loyal to the parents and you love them and you take care of them. And your mother and your father was, often quoted to us as children. Honor your mother and your father, that your days may be long on the land. Children, obey your parents. Our parents quoted that to us, day in and day out. The Bible was quoted, was part of the way we were shaped, because all these people, even if they didn't darken church doors on that Windrush, not one of them would ever have any reason to tell you that they don't believe in God. They're faithful people, amazing group of people. They became nurses and doctors. My father wanted to be a lawyer because he was a good speaker, very, very articulate. And what he was told as a black man, he couldn't. He went, like so many of his generation, and worked in a factory where he inhaled chemicals that killed him at 33. And I know lots of working class white people are the same thing, and Irish men. But today it's about this generation who made terrible sacrifices and were dehumanized. So should they be fighting for compensation? Nobody can compensate the generation for what's happened to them, and we're still being humiliated. Form comes and says, "You think you ought to apply for compensation?" Really? People come to my door as a priest at the vicarage. "Oh, we'd like to apply for compensation." Really? What? And who do you think is going to compensate you for the dehumanization of a group of people? I mean, did you see how they dress? Did you see how Caribbeans dressed when they came off the ship? That's how they normally, that's Caribbeans for you. They were dressed from head to toe, hats. Because we're very conservative people. Don't even worry about what you see at the carnival, that's kind of exhibitionism. I don't know where that came from. Because actually, Caribbeans of that generation are very conservative. Very conservative. When I used to go out, my mother used to say, "Have you got on the skirt on?" "Yes." "Let me see if you can see through the dress." "No." "Yes, I can see the shape underneath." "Go upstairs and take them off." Because you have to be able to conservative community. People hear Caribbeans and black people being noisy. Actually, underneath that, very conservative. So I still don't go out anywhere without checking. "Can you see through the dress, Anthony?" "No, Eve." Sometimes it teases me. "Yeah, I like what I see." Really? And I'll go back up and change. So he has to stop that now. Because that's so deeply ingrained, that conservative about their faith and about their politics. And they're more conservative than people would think. Because my family were PNP. My father was from a poor background. My mother was from a wealthy background, because I had a servant as a child. And we have this stereotype that all black people are poor and destitute and they came. Actually, it wasn't. It's a complex picture. Yeah, I know what it's like to go on the bus. I'm coming from boarding school, the Eureka Prep, and somebody says, "Excuse me, could you, dear little girl, just get up? It's Mr. Blackrow's granddaughter." And the child gets up, and I thought that was normal. I thought, oh, it's normal. I'm George's granddaughter. So when I came to England, thinking, nobody's getting up to make me sit. Because I was called me nigger and walk. And that dehumanization, that slow dehumanization, has cost Britain dearly. Because if you dehumanize one person, you dehumanize yourself. That's a tragedy. So this compensation scheme, which I know little about because I've taken little interest in it, because I just think, you'll never be able to compensate my family and the generation of black men and women, some who died from stress, some who never made it back for 5 years. 5 years is still like a figure which haunts my generation because they thought they couldn't cope with more than 5 years. And I said to my son, because I'm moving into my childhood home that my mom used the partner money to buy, and all of that generation used partner money to buy. They worked for little or nothing. The poor, white poor, didn't get much, Mom. Really. Let's remember the white poor, but this moment we're not talking about class. We're talking about a group of people who worked hard, prayed hard. I used to think, why on earth do black people pray so much and God couldn't give a toss? I used to think that, and I still struggle with that. Any minister who tells you that there isn't a moment in his or her time life where you ask and question God, do we really think that Abraham in a hot climate could have just traveled without thinking, what on earth am I doing? How did I say yes to this? And I think of our parents. That generation, I don't know how they didn't have, I think it was fear why they didn't question God more about where God is in that journey from the Caribbean by ship, many of them. Not just the Windrush generation, the one immediately after as well. They came because they were invited. So when we talk about the Windrush generation, it can't be just about those who were on that ship. The legacy has been one of pain. When Margaret Thatcher said that my mother and her generation had to pay for citizenship, and my mother sobbed. I heard my mother sob and said, what have I come to? How could I come to a place that thinks so little of me? And those are my words. But she cried that day and she said, Margaret Thatcher is a wicked woman. So when my auntie had this picture on over the bed, and I said, I'm not sleeping in here with that. And she said, well, without Margaret Thatcher, I wouldn't make so much money. I said, I know. But I'm not sleeping with her over my bed. Because you and your sister and all your contemporaries had to pay for a citizenship that they shouldn't have paid for. They shouldn't have been asked to pay for it. And my mother said to me, you're going to pay, I have to pay because I have to protect you so you don't get thrown out or you don't know in Jamaica really. So I'm going to pay. But that's a wicked thing to do, she said. And I don't know how they did it, but they had to because it's the only safety net they had. And we're still not safe. We're still having black people being taken on planes, kids who were born here and don't know the Caribbean, secretly taking them back to the places they don't know. Christians can't afford to be ignorant. Christians have to make a decision. If we have a comfortable life, and every now and then we pay sort of some attention to the uncomfortable, or we decide that our faith and justice are inseparable. Faith, justice, love, and all the qualities that I sometimes can't find in our world, in our society. So as a black woman priest who is about to embark on a life of some relative freedom, because I'm going to write my story. Well, this publisher approached me and said, "I'd just love to write your story." I said, "You sure about that? What's the bloody hell?" And she said, "Yeah." I saw the publisher last week and he came to see me here. And he said, "I just can't wait for us to start writing." And I said, "You might just regret it, you know." He said, "Well, in that case, we'd write 2 books. One was just going to be honky-dory and out of all the times when I just enjoy the things that I've done. But the moments of wrestling politically, and my faith with the God whom my parents and their generation worshipped, even when I got kicked out of church because I didn't think that the God that I was seeing at home on the picture in the dining room saying he's a silent listener to every conversation, I didn't think I wanted to worship that God. Now you may be alarmed by that, but I really don't mind, because I have a vision that when God does meet me eventually, if he lets me in, he's going to say, "Oh boy, you're one of my toughest children." Because for years I didn't go back to church. My mother would cry every Sunday morning, and I said, "Well, if you can give me one good reason why I should, then I will. Give me a good reason why I should go blindfolded." And it wasn't my exact words. I just said, "Oh, Jesus, he wasn't saying that. God," I said, "You mean God will strike me down? And what kind of God is this you speak of?" He said, "Well, can't you be like all other children and don't ask questions?" Do you really want a child like that? "Well, no, because I stand this daughter." And she didn't tell me I'm her daughter as well, because she's just as cantankerous. Lovingly cantankerous. But because that's how they survived. They survived by faith that impossible would happen. So today, we're still, Bob Marley, one of my great heroes, he has some powerful songs. Before I finish, so you can go into a group. What time is it? Because I can't. Yeah. Bob Marley has some powerful songs. One of the songs that Bob Marley has, it says, "You throw my corn, I don't call fowls." Now in the Caribbean, they have corn and in order to feed the fowls, the chickens and all of that, throw my corn out. And they all carry on. I remember chancing on the veranda as a child, and the servant would throw it out. A big bowl of corn. And I think I'll be fascinated by that. I love that song because the Windrush idea of compensation is the government throws a few pounds and we all meet in meetings and we discuss how we can apply for it and how we can and get some money to compensate us for this terrible experience we've had that you can't put money on. I've never applied because I think Kathleen by now, my mom, would understand why I wouldn't apply for it. And I'm not saying those who want to apply for it shouldn't, but I've seen black people run around like headless chickens. "Oh, do you know how to apply for it?" No, and I could give it down. Right? If they want to to get some compensation. They know where we are. They know exactly where we are. And can they compensate us financially? No, not really. Not for what my parents and their generation went through. So I'm not condemning those who decide to apply. I've pointed them in the right direction. I said, okay, so-and-so up the road, you know, he has his hands on what's happening, so go and see him. But for me, no, because I'm a proud woman, very proud. That's why I mean God has such problems, because I'm not terribly humble. Oh, can you just be humble for a moment? No. So yeah, if they want to go and Bob Marley send me through the car in a carnival, and by that it means that you can throw a few pounds, at those niggas, and they all come scuttling in and wanting some. And the evidence about who's been able to receive some money is not good at all. And it is shown that a lot of non-Jamaicans have been able to get financial compensation. And we still have lots of black people going around saying, I still don't understand it, because it's been made deliberately vague and complex. So, black people, those ordinary black folks, have to go and find somebody to sort of see if they can access the few, £10,000. Part of my brain says to me, you can never compensate this generation whom I've grown up with, who shaped me to be the woman I am. It was a lot I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with about the definition of faith. Definition of faith, I suppose you don't ask questions, but I think religion and all of that has hindered them from saying, this is injustice. And it seems to me that they're still afraid to say so. The Windrush generation, full of dignity, full of dreams, full of hope. My hat, I bow down to them because they have been amazing against the odds. Despite the humiliation and begging for something that should have been given if we really truly are Christians and believe in justice, we still have the Windrush generation having to search for ways of being compensated. I think it's despicable, but I take my hat off to them. Thank you for listening.